When Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War got announced as coming out during this disaster of a year, my immediate thought was reflective of that. I thought it was probably going to be a disaster. I mean, this is the 17th game in the series after 17 straight years of a Call of Duty title. But I don't know what it was. I just wasn't as excited as I was with this title as I was with Modern Warfare's return the year prior. However, after picking up this title, going into it with very low expectations, I have to say that Black Ops Cold War's campaign is actually pretty good at times, but that's not saying it's a fantastic game and worthy of endless praise. Cold War certainly tries a lot of new things, plays around with what we define as a classic Call of Duty formula, whilst also playing tribute to the original Black Ops games. So in today's video, I want to talk about Black Ops Cold War's campaign, talk about what it does right, talk about all the new changes, and talk about all the things I don't like within this campaign, because honestly, it's a real mixed bag. Before I kick this video off, however, I do want to say I will be talking about some core mechanics and some of the key moments within the story, so there will be minor spoilers ahead. However, I will not be talking about the main plot points or any ending within this video, but consider yourself warned, I will be talking some minor spoilers. But anyways, welcome to WiseFish, and this is my review of Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War's campaign. I got to admit, whilst I thought I would massively dislike this campaign, as the past few Call of Duties haven't really appealed to me apart from maybe Modern Warfare 2019, Black Ops Cold Wars surprised me, and I actually quite enjoyed its at times complex storytelling. After Black Ops 3 and 4, where one had a truly puzzling campaign which honestly made no sense to me and had barely any links to the original titles, and then 4 having no real visible campaign whatsoever, it was nice to go back to where it all started and reacquaint ourselves with the iconic characters from the beginning in this Black Ops 1.5 type story. This time we find ourselves within the decade of the neon 1980s, a period where tensions between the West and the East were not as hot as in the 1960s and 70s, but there was still some tension in the air between Reagan and Gorbachev that could have triggered another Cuban Missile Crisis. This is where we join our famous group of characters, Adler, Mason, Woods, and Hudson. The ultimate mission at hand during this campaign is to uncover the spy network of the USSR and ultimately stop a nuclear attack that appears imminent. Our one name we have to find is known to us as Pegasus, a man we only know through one single photo. Throughout this campaign we play as a new operative known as Bell, who is a technical expert and is able to decrypt vital intel for the small undercover group as we try and figure out not only where Pegasus is, but also what he plans to do. Throughout this story there are a lot of twists and turns as to be expected from a Black Ops campaign, and there are a lot more spy focused moments where it feels more like a game version of Bridge of Spies than a standard all-explosive Call of Duty or Michael Bay film. Black Ops Cold War has to be praised with the fact that it takes an absolute ton of inspiration from its first two games. It certainly feels like it's part of the series again. There are links to those original games, you have all the characters back, and they all play a vital role in the story. The voice acting is alright, I guess. They don't sound amazing and more like generic action stars.
Mason and Woods are still wrapping up business in Kiev, which means Volkov is ours. Gear up, and we'll move out.
It's also sad to have a change in some of the voice actors, especially with Woods, but their personalities seem to still be there, and there are actually some moments that made me laugh and smile.
You sound concerned too. If you're trying to be friendly, this is the dumbest way to go about it.
We're just fucking with you.
The Brit within this game, however, annoyed me. I don't know who the voice actor is, but that definitely did not sound like a native English accent at all. It was too posh even for the Queen.
Well, you tell me. After we dug it up, you spent 2 full hours decrypting everything inside. You seem to think Volkov was the name to pay attention to.
But anyways, when I say it has a lot in common with the original Black Ops games, I'm talking about one thing in particular, however. That is the way the game finally gives you back choices, and I mean important choices. Throughout the whole story, you are given dialogue options that dictate how you develop as a character, your relationship with your squad, how you deal with enemies, and a wide variety of things that actually play a big part on your overall outcome. When ending a level where you have to track down a certain individual, you can have your character dictate if you kill them or spare them, meaning they play more of a role later on. on, or their death can advance some things going forward. Having these choices is really great for engagement, in my honest opinion. Finally, I feel like this is a COD story that I am dictating through my in-game actions, something I haven't experienced since all the way back in 2010. It certainly opens up more replayability. Even things like dictating what organization your character works for plays a vital role in how the story unfolds to some extent and who you relate to in your group. For example, I picked MI6 to represent the lads in good old Blighty. Immediately, Adler addresses me by this title and states that I will get on well with this British informant called Park, who is also from MI6. These small choices just immerse me into this game, made me feel like my choices really mattered, even the small ones, and I really felt like they had gone back to the player choice focus. It certainly makes me want to play it again to see what other endings I can uncover, which is something I never thought I'd say in regards to a modern Call of Duty campaign. There's one level right at the end of the game which is primarily focused on storytelling and your choices, and can I say, I think it is a fantastic piece of storytelling. It has a variety of options done through level design, Adler's creepy voiceover, and gameplay. You can completely go against everything that has been told to you, and there are some things you can find if you go off the beaten path. That is honestly really cool. I won't spoil it though, as it's something that is better to experience blind than have it spoiled. But I will say one thing, and skip ahead if you don't want to hear. But this bit where you go into the horrifying caves of the Viet Cong and then you go into a pitch black area and the zombies make a cameo was incredible, and so fitting of this mental torment Bell is going through trying to collect his real memories. Honestly, it was brilliant. Anyways, in-game cutscenes are present again as characters talk up their options as you are allowed to just venture around the room, and thank God. As much as I think the pre-rendered cutscenes are amazingly detailed, especially the Reagan one at the beginning, I do feel like sometimes you're a bit too removed from what is going on. Not nearly as good as they were back in the original days where you sit right next to Kennedy himself. However, after a few pre-rendered cutscenes, I realised this game really was telling the story to the player through its levels and through in-game moments, and I really loved this. It immersed me far more, and some scenes later on gave me that same feeling I felt in Black Ops 1 near the end of the game. On top of that, the world design I personally think is fantastic in some levels. Exploring KGB HQ was really fantastic with some honestly brilliant architecture that really displays the supposed glitz and glamour of the ones at the top of the Soviet Union and also exposes the hypocrisy of the communist regime. East Berlin is displayed really well as this quite heated, suspicious city where checkpoints appear on every road. People try to relax in bars, but at all times there is a sense of unrest as the secret police come in for a regular inspection. When Black Ops Cold War wants to paint a picture of Europe during these times and what it would have been like living under Soviet rule, it does it really well. But there just needed to be more of this in my opinion. Those levels stand out as super impressive, but there are only a couple. And with that, I've got to say, I know it sounds like I'm in endless praise of this campaign, but there are some problems that I have to point out within this story. To start with, the campaign is very short. I clocked around 4 to 5 hours in-game, and that was doing every single mission, investigating the levels looking for collectibles, and that also includes the optional missions, which I will talk about later. The problem with this is, the best missions are where the game slows down and has you thinking about the task at hand. This game could have been much longer and just had a more slower pace to it. Instead, the slower paced moments of storytelling are ruined by the classic super fast paced levels that feel just honestly really boring and too action packed compared to the stealth spy focused levels before. On top of that, the campaign just feels too much like it's trying to be the original Black Ops again. On one hand, it feels like a good reboot for the series, utilizing all the greatest moments from the original game to create this whole new experience. But then on the other hand, it feels like it's trying to be part of the original trilogy by bringing in all the characters from Black Ops 1 and 2, and honestly, I felt like they needed to decide if it was one thing or the other. The problem I found was because the story structure and twists the game throws at the player is very similar to the original game, I kind of predicted exactly what was going to happen in the latter half of the story. Because of that, when the twist did hit me through the in-game explanation, I said to myself, yeah, I called that right at the beginning. This isn't a bad thing, maybe this is because I'm a big fan of the original games, but it's a bit sad to me that the big reveal was somewhat predictable and in my opinion quite similar to that of Black Ops 1's. The last thing I'd say is the ending of the game where it comes to the last level just felt a bit rushed. After the big twist of the game, we are then presented with a pretty cool option which I won't spoil, but then the level that follows that decision really feels so underwhelming. It's just such a basic level with no conclusion that feels satisfying. Instead, just left it open for a second Black Ops, or maybe a link to Modern Warfare universe or Black Ops 2. I'm not sure, but I was just a bit underwhelmed. And if it wasn't for the specific ending I got, which was related to my actions, then I would have been massively disappointed. I do feel like the structure of the game was pretty solid. The way they added choices was massively effective and helped my immersion, and the in-game cutscenes was a nice welcome back. But the story was far too rushed for my liking. It took a topic of infiltrating the USSR spy network and discovering a nuclear threat and rushed it massively. And if it just took things at a bit more of a slower pace and added maybe some bigger levels, then maybe this could have been in contention for one of the best Black Ops stories I've experienced. But sadly, because of some obvious decisions and some pacing issues, I felt like it falls short of being in comparison to Black Ops 1 and 2. However, it is in a whole different league in comparison to Black Ops 3, and thank goodness this series has gone back to what it does best and stands out as different by giving players a real choice in how they play this campaign. It's not a perfect campaign, but it was certainly a COD campaign that I would happily go back to and play again to see how I can change the final outcome. Moving on to gameplay and level design, this is where the game really shines, but then at the same time falls on its face. It's a weird hybrid of Call of Duty being at its best and different, then straight after being that monotonous shooter I have begun to refer it as. I'll start with the positives I got from it though, starting with the mission hub. As I mentioned in my story section, Black Ops Cold War adds a lot more in-game storytelling sections where you are in the shoes of Bell, or in some cases Mason, venturing through some of the levels, and the story is told to you then and there and expanded upon within pre-rendered cutscenes, much like they did in the original Call of Duty titles. The mission hub, however, expands upon that and allows you to venture around this little area, speaking to everyone you work with and exploring all the information for the mission at hand. I personally thought this mission hub was fantastic for immersion. It allows you to get to know everyone around you, get some more information of the people you are looking for, the past cases members have been on, and just far more context into the story of the Black Ops universe. But in this mission hub, you are also allowed to venture around the area. There are rooms which feature different items and also a locked room in which you need to find a certain combination to open it up and discover what's inside. There's also one room at the back which is a dark room with a few pieces of information on the wall and a computer at the back of it. And I'm not gonna lie, I personally felt like this room was super creepy, especially as the power goes out when you go up to the computer. But the creepiest part to this room was when you leave it, Adler becomes this super creepy dude looking at what you're up to. But the main point of this area is to look at the mission hub board and select what you want to play. This consists of two things, the main mission at hand and two optional missions. The optional missions were something I didn't honestly expect to see, and I was quite pleased. Here you can just get straight to work playing them and taking down the marked individual, or you can solve the puzzle at hand by decrypting a floppy disk or figuring out who is part of the spy ring within Europe. I really enjoyed the puzzle solving in this game. Decrypting the floppy disk was quite a challenge. It wasn't massively difficult, but it still put the old big brain to work. And marking the undercover spies was satisfying as well. Although I will say I don't honestly know if I got them correct or not. At no point did the game alert to me if I was successful in this process. For all I know, my crew just went with it and went, well done, you did it. I would have liked a bit more acknowledgement for doing this, but it was pretty cool. To help solve these puzzles, you have to play the main missions and discover information throughout the levels in the form of collectibles. And honestly, I think it's nice to see actual meaningful collectibles within levels. It means you explore everything within those levels and see the full map in a search for those items. I will say, however, I would have liked to have collectibles that you could find outside of these missions just for achievements, but that's just me personally. During the main missions, there are also optional missions like locating an informant and deciding what to do with them. Once again, you can choose what you do with them, whether you kill them, leave them, or take them back to base with you, and once again your choices affect the overall outcome of the story. Although I will say there was one optional mission that I did and I didn't really see the point, as later in the game I was told to do something that went against everything that I just did in my original decision. It puzzled me, but I just kind of accepted it. I did like this one feature, however, where I went to save this guy here, and within the area were some notes. Finding these notes opened dialogue options for me as I interrogated him in a LA Noire style manner, doubting everything he said. Little Little features like this help me invest in the gameplay far more, and it's just something refreshing from a franchise that is known specifically for just running and gunning. Speaking of which, I do have to say, when Black Ops Cold War lowers your gun or doesn't give you one at all, this is where the game shines for me. The more spy focused missions where you have to infiltrate an enemy base and sneak through buildings hunting for evidence is where this game truly stands out from all the others within the series. These slower moments have more tension, they force you to think outside of the box and utilize the game's new mechanics. Berlin's mission and this KGB HQ mission stood out to me as some of my favourites because they utilize mechanics which are very rarely seen in a Call of Duty game before, and they just opened up so many options for how I approach them, giving me a choice. I wasn't restricted on how I go about the level's approach, and although the Berlin one was pretty linear in its look and design, because it gave me options on my approach, I didn't feel like it was a boring level to play. The KGB HQ mission felt really like a better version of the Call of Duty World War II mission Infiltration, as I have to strategically plan my route, how I get past obstacles, and how I ultimately get to my final goal. It was really great for immersion, and I loved venturing through this beautifully designed base with gold plating on almost everything. There are quite a few levels within this game where I felt like the developers knew exactly what they were doing and wanted to make something that stood out, and like I said, that certainly stands out within those two levels that I mentioned, and the story level set in Vietnam near the end of the game. However, then we get to the more traditional Call of Duty levels where gunplay is the main focus. This for me is where the game just died a tragic death. From the offset, in fact, the missions are just primarily gunfight focused, and they are just pretty bland. Level designs are alright, but nothing to really rave about. They are incredibly linear in their designs with no real path to take to vary up your approach. The second level has you on a on-rails moment with explosions happening around you like it's a generic Hollywood blockbuster. And for me, it's the worst way to set up your game set in the Cold War, a time where tension was high but no real gunfights were going on between Russia and the US. My first impression of the game was just so negative. It was only going into the Berlin level where my opinion changed. But there are so many other levels in this game that are just forgettable. Vietnam was set up so well and made to be this great moment, almost like a nod to Black Ops 2, but then the actual gameplay just lets it down. It's just so damn boring, with enemies being terribly dumb, hiding in plain sight, throwing grenades all the time, and just being so boring, honestly, with a linear design that is so blank. Then to show off how random these levels get, you then fly the most awful helicopter and just mow down any house in sight as you defend a US base. I mean, why? Levels like this just make me think, how did they go so wrong? Some levels have some potential to be level of the year with amazing designs. Then you get levels like the first Vietnam one where they are just absolutely ridiculous. There's one cool level where you see an American street replica with 80s memorabilia and an awesome reference to Burger Town, linking this game to Modern Warfare 2 to some extent. However, my interest in this level was lost by how bland its direction was. It was just filler. Shoot this, walk forward, shoot this, get in the car and mow them down. Even the boss fights against heavily armed enemies were not nearly as tense or enjoyable as they were in Modern Warfare 2019, where you had to utilize your surroundings and explosives. Here you just shoot them in the helmet to eventually kill them. It's bland and really nothing special. But also, talking about explosives, for some reason every level has red barrels everywhere, meaning that it's just so easy to blow everything up. It's just really weird design. All the levels that had a focus on gunfights as the main mechanic were just boring. And yes, I know this is a Call of Duty title, but they really showed potential in this game going down the spy route. There was innovation there, and then that just gets shot like it was a double agent and gets replaced with the same thing we have had for 17 years straight with no mechanics that are new or anything, and I was just really disappointed. They even got rid of the peek mechanic when you look down the sights, and I don't know why, because I actually liked that in Modern Warfare, but maybe that's just me personally. Even the optional missions are generic filler, just this time in a bigger multiplayer map. They don't relate to the puzzle solving, they feel completely distant from what your task was, and I just felt like they were really underwhelming. To summarize my thoughts on the gameplay, it really has some fantastic moments that really need to be praised, especially the last Vietnam mission where you relocate your memories and the Berlin and KGB HQ missions. But those moments are quickly ruined by just bland, generic, linear missions that solely rely on the traditional Call of Duty gameplay. And honestly, the guns do not feel as good as Modern Warfare 2019's. So for me, it was a massive step back. Cold War could have really had gameplay gameplay and levels that were unlike any of the other Black Ops titles and Call of Duty titles in general. And a few levels really do, but they are overshadowed by the mediocre shooter levels that make this game's gameplay so messy. Since Call of Duty have updated their engine, Modern Warfare and Cold War are honestly some of the best looking shooters on the market and can easily challenge Battlefield now, finally. With the new ray tracing added to the game, it just makes everything pop off the screen. The moonlight as it hits the roof, the smoke from the chimneys, the shiny gleam of the KGB base with its gold plating and the muzzle flashes from all your guns are just truly spectacular to look at. There were many times in levels where I would just admire the lighting and the environments. Berlin was especially great as the lighting played a core part to the mechanics. AI civilians were lit up by flashlights, others lurked in corners or under street lamps, and the cafe's neon lights really showed you what decade this game was set in. It really is a beautiful world that is lit really well. Ignoring how linear some of the levels are and how boring some of the latter levels are, they do have really well designed areas that have moments of awe as the lighting hits it just right. Sound design wise, I'm disappointed. To start with, the guns just don't have that same punch as before. They feel really weak in comparison to, once again, Modern Warfare's. They felt far more arcadey, and I'm not gonna lie, I could not tell the difference between some guns. A lot just sounded like generic guns, and none stood out as being unique. Maybe that would have improved the gameplay for me, just some guns that felt much more impactful when in battles. I had to turn off the sound for the hit markers as well because they just drowned out my gun sound effects, and they were just horrible to listen to. I also had to completely turn off the music because it was just non-stop and ruined the atmosphere completely. When I dropped into Vietnam, I was just bombarded by this epic music, and I just felt like it didn't fit at all, so I had to completely turn it off. But with the game looking amazing and sounding, well, alright I suppose, how does it handle on PC? Well, I run this on a Ryzen 3700X and a 2070 Super on high settings with RTX turned on high and DLSS turned on performance mode, and honestly I didn't experience any technical issues. No drop frames, it was a really smooth experience. Even when there are lots of things going on in my game, it was sticking to an average frame rate of 70 FPS and the lowest of 61 FPS. However, there were quite a lot of bugs. Enemies would glitch out, sometimes their helmets or hats would just float in midair, and there were moments where the camera would just nope out of the action and go somewhere else. On top of that, the game would occasionally crash, telling me it was a fatal error. Then boot up again in safe mode, which was very annoying, and only once, but my game completely froze and seemed to freeze the rest of my PC with it, and forcing me to do a whole system restart, which is a nightmare when you're mid-recording. That recording didn't make it, by the way. The final thing I'll say is the checkpoints are pretty awful. I didn't die much, but if I did, I spawned right back in the action with enemies hitting me before I could even control my character. It was a nightmare, but luckily I played it on regular difficulty and it wasn't too hard to get out of it. But technical wise, apart from a few bugs, I was happy to see this RTX heavy game was running very smoothly considering it was developed during the pandemic. Sure, it needs some patches to get rid of the floating Vietnamese hats and the crashes, which are frustrating but not constantly happening, but after that I think this will be a very smooth experience in the long run. I'm just not the biggest fan of the sound design and the overpowering music. So is Black Ops Cold War worth it? Well, honestly, I think it had some real standout moments. Like I said earlier, when the game slows down and focuses more on spy missions and data collecting, this is where the game shines massively. I can happily recommend the Berlin mission and the KGB mission to anyone who wants to play it. They're so unique, they give options, and they're unlike any Call of Duty mission I've played before, apart from the one in Call of Duty World War II. But the structure of the game is ruined by really bland gunfight missions that lost my interest very fast. The story I felt was pretty good with some great moments, but because of these terrible choices to keep things the same as it's been for 17 years straight, it made me lose interest and I got seriously bored shooting my way through Cuba or Vietnam in my janky ass helicopter. I wish Call of Duty took more risks and stuck to a plan instead of meshing two genres together, which ruin the pacing. If they want a spy game in the Cold War, make that. If they want an action-packed war game, make that, but don't combine them. It just doesn't work. Storytelling is fantastic in some some levels, especially on the second to last one, and there are moments that really stood out for me, and I remember them really well. But overall, like my title says, Cold War for me is a real hit and miss title, and it's a real shame because it has huge potential to be something fantastic, daring and different within the FPS genre. This could have been an immersive sim game where the campaign has us doing more investigative missions, but sadly, to stay true to its brand, it looks like Activision and Treyark took the easy and safe option and made a generic shooter with just a few hints at something special. Maybe one day a veteran FPS fan and immersive sim fan like myself will get a COD that stands out on its own again. For now though, it's just the 17th addition to the series, another game for the shelf, and will be remembered for just a few key moments, but will be forgotten in the long run, all because they played it safe. So those are my thoughts on Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War's campaign, the latest installment of the series. But let me know what you guys thought. Did you enjoy the game? What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. I really enjoyed piecing this one together as I had a lot to talk about and think over, so hopefully it was a good watch. I'll leave my social media links below if you want to follow me on there, as well as my Patreon link for if you'd like to financially support this channel. And speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine quickly. Starting with our big fish, Duquesne23, our two sharks, JP and Dylan, and our now three huge megalodons, Sinus, Morgan Brazier, and JJD896. Thank you all so much for your ongoing support. It really means the world to me. But that is all for now, guys. Once again, thank you for watching. Stay safe, lots of love, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.